Okay, so now it's almost time for you to move away from the presentation and do some authority control of your own. If you prefer to do the activity later and go on with the presentation, that's fine too. Just make sure you do the activity and post accordingly in the thread. On the forum and the discussion board on Blackboard, where I created the Session 11 module, that's where you can find there's a thread that's named Activity 1, Authority Control, or something like that. And that's where you can find the details of the activity. Before you go over there, what I suggest you do is pull up a web browser window and just sort of listen to my audio and follow along with me doing the same thing I'm doing. This would be the equivalent of me doing an in-class demo, just so you can see how to navigate the records and what you're looking for. And then you can go off and do some authority control of your own and discuss what you find in the bulletin boards. So, in your web browser window, go to authorities, that's authorities plural, .loc.gov. And then that brings you to the homepage for the Library of Congress Authorities, and you click on the link to search authorities. Okay, so now you have a search screen, and we're going to do a search to try to find the proper name heading for Mark Twain, because as you know, he had, Mark Twain itself was a pseudonym for Samuel Clemens, and he also had some other pseudonyms, so we want to find out what the authoritative heading is for Mark Twain. So I'm going to just type into the search box, Mark Twain, MarkTwain, and then in that search type box just below the search text, I'm going to select Name Authority Headings. So I'll select that, and then I'll click on Begin Search. And what you should see is a list of results. And the first thing on the list is Mark Twain, and the type of heading is personal name. So hey, we must be in business, right? But then, if you look in the Bib Records column, the second column of this first row, it says that there's one Bib record or bibliographic record attributed to the person with the personal name Mark Twain. So now my BS detector is starting to go off. I don't think this is a good heading. Another indicator that this is not a good heading is that I don't have one of those red boxes in the first column that indicates that this is an authorized heading. So I'm beginning to think that I haven't found the Mark Twain that I was looking for. If you scroll through the list, you'll see a lot of corporate names of organizations that have something to do with Mark Twain, like the Mark Twain Association of America, Mark Twain Boyhood Home and Museum with an ampersand, Mark Twain Boyhood Home A&D Museum, and so on. You can scroll through the list and explore that a little bit if you want to. So what I need to do is modify my search. Now, I happen to know, because I've worked with this file before, that it's a really persnickety file, and I do want you to go in on your own time and look at the frequently asked questions to find out how they do their searching. But I'm going to click on the new search button that's sort of near the top of the page, and this time I'm going to search for Twain, comma, space, Mark. And I'm still searching in the name authority headings, and I click on Begin Search. And the second item in that list looks much more like what I'm expecting. There are 1,513 bibliographic records, and there is one of those authorized references and notes, red buttons in the left margin to indicate to me that there is an authority record here for the person who is identified as Twain, comma, Mark, comma, 1835 through 1910. So if you want to see the actual record, you have to click on that red button that says Authorized Refs and Notes. And there you see a little summary of the information about it. So it gives you the name heading again. You can click on the See Also links to see the name authority records for his pseudonyms. You can click on the scope note to find out more information about this person. And you can also click on the authority record link to see the headings that might be used in a MARC record. And unfortunately, this is total user interface fail. To see the actual real live authority record and to get the permanent link that's a unique identifier to this authority record, you have to click on the first item in that list. The field is marked heading 1XX, and the text reads Twain, Mark, 1835 through 1910. If you click on that, then you see there's an LC control number, which is just a unique ID number that the Library of Congress has assigned to this identity. And then you see an LC, the real authority record. And this permalink functions as what we were talking about last week, is a namespace. It is a URI that is a permanent and authoritative pointer to a record. And now the Library of Congress Name Authority is functioning like an ontology of personal names. And anybody who wants to know more information about Mark Twain, or to make sure that they are talking about the Mark Twain, can use this permalink and can point their own bibliographic records to this permalink so that everybody knows that we're all talking about the same guy. And that's what's cool about about using authority control for bibliographic records. It gets everybody talking in the same language and on the same page. So now it's your turn to go over to the message boards and to try to do some authority control of your own, and I'll be anxious to read your reflections on what it was like for you. Okay, so now that you've gotten your feet wet with authority control and you have a general idea of what bibliographic control is all about, now we're going to talk about bibliographic relationships, and this discussion is going to prepare us to discuss Ferber in a few slides. So bibliographic relationships describe how different resources can relate to each other, or also how resources can relate to other kinds of concepts, like how a resource can relate to a person, or a resource can relate to a subject or concept. Bibliographic relationships are similar to the semantic relationships we talked about very early on this semester, but these relationships pertain specifically to bibliographic resources, and whereas semantic relationships can really exist just between concepts or anything. So an equivalence relationship is exact or near exact copies of the same thing. So 2 copies of the same edition of a book or an MP3 recording of audio from a DVD would have equivalence relationships with each other. Although you could quibble about whether the MP3 from the DVD is equivalent, since there probably is some degradation of sound quality. So none of these are set in stone, and they're also not mutually exclusive. Derivative relationship, a work that is based on or derived from another work. So an updated edition or an adaptation, or that kind of thing. A descriptive relationship is, this is not rocket science. It's a work that describes another work. So criticism, commentary, and cliff notes are examples of descriptive works. Let's move on to the next slide to see some more examples. There can be a whole part relationship between 2 works, where one work can be a part of another work, like a volume in an encyclopedia, a chapter in a book, or an article in a periodical, so on. An accompanying relationship describes when a work is meant to go with another work, like a math workbook that goes with the textbook, or an index that goes with a large, if you have a multi-volume encyclopedia, it might be accompanied by an index to the articles, or documentation that comes with some other kind of resource. Excuse me. A sequential relationship is a work that precedes or continues an existing work, and that the place and the sequence of the subsequent work is an important feature. So, our catch-all example is the Harry Potter series. So each book in that series would have a sequential relationship with the books before and or after it. A shared characteristic. So this is our sort of catch-all bibliographic relationship for works that have some kind of relationship with each other, but which aren't captured by any of those other relationships that were named. What it means is that two resources or two works have some characteristic in common, and those could be things like author, title, language, subject. They could be shared character. They could share the characteristic that they belong to the same collection in your library. You can sort of choose any characteristic you want. It's sort of like an ad hoc category, back from when we talked about categories. So this just goes to show that there are as many ways as you can name that resources or items or books or whatever have a relationship to each other, then you can put them into a bibliographic relationship with each other. And so now we start sort of, crossing that line from, we were talking good old-fashioned library science just a couple of minutes ago, and now we're starting to get a little bit semantic web-ish, because one of the defining characteristics of the semantic web, and also that we saw with database design, was this idea of describing entities using attributes and then putting them in relationships with each other. And it's usually the relationships, whether it's foreign key relationships in a relational database or object properties in a semantic web ontology. It's usually the relationships that really add richness to a description of an information universe. So resources that are in bibliographic relationships with each other are linked. If the type of link is definable in the ISAR, and we're taking a really broad definition of ISAR here. It doesn't just have to be, like a library catalog or a database. An ISAR could be, the system of ontologies and instances out there on the semantic web. So resources and bibliographic relationships with each other, they are linked if the type of link is definable in the ISAR and if the link between the two resources is encoded. So basically what this slide is saying that we can articulate bibliographic relationships in ISARs as long as the capability is there for relationships to be described. So we saw that in XML, it's not quite as strong with defining relationships among entities as it is at describing entities and giving them attributes or sub-elements. But we did see a lot of power for the semantic web and RDF, of course, and for relational databases to define relationships. So it depends on the kind of technology that you're using. And then if the technology is available, it's not doing any good unless you meet that second little benchmark there that says if the link between the two resources is encoded. So you have to create a relationship in the system that describes the bibliographic relationship that you're talking about. And then you have to say that two or more books participate in that relationship. And all of a sudden you have a much richer description of the information universe.